So now, we've started with our foreground interpretation from a Schenkerian perspective with our slurs here. On a foreground sketch, we can show some of this stuff like this. Okay, so we've got our main note D. I'm just going to give that a big value because that's going to be our starting point. And we'll put some of this detail here, relegate it to an inner voice. And we've got our A. Up here. Let's connect some of this stuff. Why these slurs? Well, these notes all help to project our main chord, which is 1 at the beginning. The slurs here show that they belong to the same chord. Now I could slur like this if I wanted, but that's not really necessary because by this stem I'm saying it belongs inside, packed up inside as an inner voice to these outer voice notes. Let's put our bass motion in there. 1, 2, 7, and back to 1. Okay, so here this note returns and it's decorated by the double neighbors. We've already talked about that. Now we pick up with the motion in our main line. On a bigger scale, this is going to be motion into an inner voice because we're going to pick up with that D eventually here and really stay there for quite some time before a descent will occur. I like to normally start from the end and work back, but since we had already seen that this is a self-contained unit, I'm doing quite a bit of work at the beginning of the phrase before I move on. I'm going to use stems just to help pull these notes out and make it clear that they are all part of this line. I'm not going to use stems on these notes up here because they don't participate in that line. In fact, we'll view them as being inner voice things, entities that have been cast up above. That's what it means to be a covering tone. These are obscuring, in a way, the descent from D to B. They belong to another part. Now, we can see that these two swap. In other words, we have a voice exchange. This part's note ends up down here. This part's note ends up there. Those two swap places. We can really only talk of that swap happening if we conceive of the A as belonging to the same part as this F sharp. Now if I want to complete this, I'll put a G over here so that I can show that this leading tone finds resolution. You know what, that's not even necessary though, because if we've moved it to this part, it finds resolution right there. So this is completely unnecessary. Let's go to the end and work backward a little bit. Schenkerian analysis is all about getting somewhere. It's the motion, melodic motion to a goal. The goal is the cadence point in this case. This spot right here. This is the point where we have closure, and it's all because we arrive on scale degree 1. So this is a big moment when we get to this G. How do we get there? Well, we're going to look for stepwise descent from some member of the tonic triad. It'll end up being this D. We want to find motion from that D down to this G by step. At first it's very clean cut. We've got an A here, arpeggiation around it, but it's quite prominent. It's on the beat, the other notes aren't. Here's another note that's quite prominent. It's allowing us to move 3, 2, 1. Backing up further, we have this C. Notice that the C starts out up here at the chord change and ends up getting down to here. So I'm slurring these together to show the connection between them. You can think of it as primarily this C, but you've put it in a new register. The pattern starts here. You got this big scalar passage getting you from a D down below to a D an octave higher, and then another one of those over here. Because I'm interested in the stepwise descent, I'm sort of normalizing everything, and I want to have everything in the same register, the register of this D, reiterated here. I'm going to pick this D instead of that. It'll help us to see the stepwise connections that would be obscured if we were to pick something way up here. It would seem to break the pattern, but it doesn't. You've got D in 2 octaves, C in 2 octaves. So I'm going to pick the lower note out of each of those pairs. Now I can see that we go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's back up further. We have a lot of this D hanging out here. This G shows up as arpeggiation, a leap within the chord, and back again. So those are all connected, but the main note still seems to be D through here. Now here, with this 4 chord, we of course don't have a D. We've got an E. Now how does that relate to this D that then is prolonged here, sustained almost? Well, now let's consider this. This is an issue. Should I start here and say, actually, we've got a connection to this G, and now I'm going to start my descent from here. This is the real Kopftone, the real source for my descent. And the descent would go G, F sharp, E, D, and so on all the way down the octave to here. Is this an octave line? There's a big problem with that interpretation. It's this F sharp reiterated here. In this measure, it occurs over this G chord, G major. It is not part of the chord. This F sharp is not part of this C chord either. In neither measure does it have any sort of harmonic support. It does not belong to either of those chords. You need support for the notes of your descent. It can't just be a transitory note, a passing tone like this F sharp. It needs to be more stable than that. So we can't go there. We can't do the octave line. We're just going to have to view this G kind of the way we do this one up here, as motion within the tonic, but not involving progression, melodic progression, because it's not tied in by stepwise motion. So it might deserve a stem, and yes, we can relate it back to notes of the tonic triad, maybe like so. This passing motion will show with a slur to the E. Show that this G comes about by motion within the 4 chord. This one comes about by motion within the 1 chord. But our main note is this D at the beginning. All right, so how do you represent all this information down here? Let's shift it down. So we do have a prominent G up there. We've got an F sharp that gets down eventually. That's kind of wild, isn't it? A reiterated passing tone on its way down to our E. Now I'm going to do this to show that that is a neighbor to the D in the next measure. And stem that D, because that's an important note. That's where we regain this D that we've had over here. So, like I said, I could slur that there because those 2 notes belong to the same chord. But if I really want to highlight the fact that this is our Kopftone, still there, retained over all this time, and just embellished with this motion here, that dash line will help show that. That's saying more than just it belongs to the same chord, but it's saying you've retained that note, and it hasn't really descended at all. This motion down is motion to an inner voice that could just as well have showed up right there, tucked away as an inner voice. You're moving to that inner voice, but you don't go further. You don't go and you don't attain closure there. We're still waiting for that to occur. The descent is yet to come. Lots of D in the next measure. I'll just represent those 3 Ds with a single one on my sketch. You don't need to represent all those reiterations in a foreground sketch. Okay, and then we've talked about this passage. We said the main note in that set of 3 is the A. We're getting to a G. Let's see, we need our 4 chord relating to the B as an incomplete neighbor. A lot of time we'll show an incomplete neighbor as prominent, but as subordinate by giving it an 8th note symbol instead of a quarter note one, and then showing how it relates to its surroundings with a slur. We could do this if we like. Okay, so that takes care of that. Let's make sure we show our big picture, that we're really still hanging on to our tonic. Let's connect this back as well. See, if I had left this without a slur here, these would not connect back up, and I want to show that it's this tonic stretched out for all this way. If something's unconnected, I have work yet to do. I need to show how it relates back to more stable things. In this case, I want to tie everything back to my tonic, the G chord that kicked it all off. Okay, now I'm ready to approach the cadence. I'm going to have to jump down to another system here on my sketch. I've run out of room. Okay, the D stays. My next thing is another D up there. And now I'm ready for this hemiola pattern. This goes way up to another D. And on beat 3 we get C up here, going all the way back down to another C over here. This is our 4 chord that crosses the bar line, and then we get our cadential 6, 4, 3. You know what, I'm going to use big note heads for all these notes that we know are bringing us to closure. 4, 3, 2, and then 1. And this beam needs to go all the way back to here. So here's the place from which all the motion departs. It departs from here, stepwise motion in a hurry at the end, getting you to closure. Let me show that we fill that in with a line there. It's all stepwise motion down from C to C. C to shining C. Okay, let's go to showing the closure at the end. Could show that in either octave, really. I'll do it up here. Okay, so these are big notes. I'm showing them as half notes because they are essential to the closure here at the end. Here's an incomplete neighbor. I'm leaping to it, and then I'm moving by step to here. That's really common for predominance. In this case, my 4/6 is moving to my dominant with embellishment, getting me to the tonic. Basically, tonic. And then predominant, dominant, tonic. This is my foreground sketch for the first 10 bars of Kerschel 283. All right, let me give you now a background sketch.